Hi everyone, I'm Rodrigo Durão and this is what's happening in Brazil. We start by updating you on the latest news from the country. In the latest survey, São Paulo's Mayor Ricardo Nunes, left-wing Guilherme Boulos and far-right influencer Pablo Marçal are in a technical tie for the city hall. But who recently stole the scene in São Paulo's election was a chair. That's because on Sunday's debate, one of the candidates threw the object over the far-right one after numerous provocations. The strategy of the victim of the attack to capitalize on it backfired though, as polls show that his overreaction to the so-called chairgate failed to convince electors. Brazil goes through the worst fires emergency ever recorded, with a huge number of wildfires sweeping over most of the country. To fight it, President Lula announced a credit line of over $93 million. The money will also go to fight drought in the Amazon, and measures include the creation of a National Climate Emergency Council and the hiring of firefighters and specialized equipment. In the first half of the year, the number of wildfires increased almost 4 times in the Amazon compared to last year. Non-regulated lands were the most affected, and although it remains responsibility of the federal government, they are often in risk of unauthorized allotment, leading to land grabbing. 2/3 of deforestation on public lands in the Amazon take place with the use of fake documents. The Landless Rural Workers Movement, the MST, is urging the Brazilian government to settle around 100,000 families who have been camping for over a decade. They criticize the inaction of the actual administration on agrarian reform and stress the need to provide regulation to territories due to the historical significance and also to ensure basic rights, community development and potential for healthy food production. In today's Story of the Week, you will know the measures that keep indigenous lands as the most preserved areas in Brazil. Even amid smoke, deforestation and chaos, the indigenous people of the Amazon have historically remained guardians of the forest. To find out more about the initiatives, Brasil de Fato visited the indigenous land of Alto Guará River in the state of Pará.
More than 180 indigenous peoples and isolated communities live in the Amazon and cultivate the forests as part of themselves, based on their deep connection with the environment and the defense of their ancestral territories. According to the latest Map Bioma survey, released in August, indigenous lands are the best preserved areas in Brazil and have lost only 1% of their native vegetation in 38 years, from 1985 to 2023, while private lands have lost 28%. Among them is the Alto Guamá River indigenous land in the northern state of Pará, which has a history of struggle and resistance in defense of forests.
In the past, there have been many conflicts, both because of fires and environmental devastation. It was common to destroy the vegetation for the cattle to graze, but now it has stopped. We have a 30-strong team of park and forest rangers.
Just March this year, that is 40 years late, more than 1,600 invaders were removed from the Tembé indigenous land by the federal government. Since then, the group Guardians of the Forest has been set up in the area. Like other indigenous lands, it is made up of native peoples with the mission of protecting the area.
We created this project so that we could protect the forest from fires. And we've even gone on a few missions, seized drugs and weapons, and almost faced conflicts.
The Alto Guamá River indigenous land covers more than 280,000 hectares. It is home to 42 villages and around 2,500 indigenous from the Tembé, Timbira, Kapur, Urubu-Kapor, and Guajajara peoples. In the Tembé case, the non-intrusion is a historic milestone and marks the beginning of a recent revival of their way of life, but the new times have also brought new problems, such as the aerial spraying of pesticides.
A gente já denunciou isso. porque de qualquer forma vai afetar a gente.
We have already denounced this because it will affect us anyway. Here in the indigenous area, there is a large açaí harvest. We are trying to preserve it.
For the indigenous peoples, the forest also plays a fundamental role in preserving traditional rites such as the Menina Moça Festival, Young Lady Festival in a raw translation, which celebrates the passage of girls from childhood to adulthood.
Se não tiver a floresta,
If we don't have the forest, we can't have the festival because it depends on pinks, nambu, and jacu, among other things like genipapo. 20 years ago, there was no such festival because we didn't have the raw materials. To have the festival like this, we had to go far away. Today, we've managed to have this kind of celebration here.
Facing a devastating climate crisis and wildfires, indigenous peoples are calling on the government and the Brazilian people to take part in a collective cry for help.
só que só as áreas indígenas não é o suficiente. A gente sabe disso. Se o governo não tomar uma...
The indigenous areas alone are not enough. If the government doesn't take action to preserve the environment, indigenous areas alone won't meet the need. We know we are preserving it, but there is no devastation here. But the heat is intense. This is a cry for help. The forest needs help, not just from the indigenous people. And if we don't get help, these peoples will end.
In this edition of Culture Talk, you will see the exhibition Ship of Fools, which show cartoons denouncing the political dimension of the floods in Rio Grande do Sul. Cartoonists from all over the state have joined forces for this group show.
After 2 months of work, around 20 cartoonists from the Rio Grande do Sul Graphic Artists Association, GRAFAR, launched the exhibition Ship of Fools, the Shipwreck of Minimum State in Porto Alegre. With the cartoon's traditional critical humor, the show portrays the devastation and political dimension of the floods that hit the state. The exhibition, which will later go on the road, opened earlier this month in the events hall of the Federation of Workers in Financial Institutions of Rio Grande do Sul. The main work, a drawing 7 meters long and 3 meters high, is as large as the tragedy and is accompanied by 60 cartoons.
We immediately thought of Picasso's Guernica, which was made to register the bomb of Guernica. And we imagined a kind of Guernica, but instead of a bombing, there was a flood. The name Ship of Fools also came to mind almost immediately because it represents a well-known allegory in the history of art, which is a painting by Hieronymus Bosch depicting a ship with nobody steering in the middle of the ocean, full of fools, crazy people given over to their private desires, without any articulation, without any collective way out.
The cartoonist says that the works raise questions about the elements behind the tragedy, such as the weakening of environmental legislation and the lack of political action.
It is a critic of elected leaders who bet firstly on neoliberalism, where the state has been diminishing its role, and secondly on nihilism, an environmental denialism that resulted, for example, in a municipal governor who didn't even oil the floodgates that had existed for more than 50 years and had worked until recently. He kept the pump circuit breakers at a level below the flood.
The cartoonists have been meeting in the Association of Graphic Artists of the State since the 80s. They currently have the monthly electronic newspaper O Grifo. The group highlights the social use of humor.
It is a way of not letting us go crazy. It works as an escape valve for frustrations and our huge problems. Another goal is to show realities through a seductive language and powerful humor.
An artist is a reflection of their time. And so, in addition to the historical record of this issue we're dealing with now, we can position ourselves and give our voice. And take this thought, take this reflection to other people.
The exhibition is supported by trade union organizations. It is being produced by the Unified Workers Center of Rio Grande do Sul, making it itinerant. The idea is to take the denunciations to other affected territories in the state.
Did you like the show? So hit the like button and share it with your friends. Don't forget to subscribe to our channel to receive notifications. We will see you next week.